All right, Dad, let's start from the beginning. When and where were you born?
I was born February 24th, 1928, in the Bronx, New York, in an area they call Kingsbridge. That was the Upper Bronx, New York.
Where were you in the order of children?
Well, I was the second from the oldest. My brother John was 1 year older than I was. He was born in January.
So there was just the one brother? It was just John
Yeah.
before you were born?
My mother had another son, Jimmy, before John was born, and he died when he was about 6 months old of pneumonia.
Describe Grandma and Grandpa a bit.
Well, Grandma and Grandpa both come from Ireland. They were only young, maybe in the early 20s when they left Ireland, and they came and they lived. Both of them, even though they didn't know each other at the time, lived in around the east side, upper Manhattan. There were tenements there. Most of the Irish people, the Irish immigrants, were living. My mother used to talk about when she spent time on Ellis Island before the Irish could embark and find their way. They had to stay on Ellis Island for a while and get their medicals and get their shots and find out just if they had a place to go and so on.
Mm.
My mother was able to stay with her aunt. Her mother's sister had come over about 10 years before that, and she stayed with her aunt, and she was here. Now, my mother never lost her love for Ireland or her attachment to it. She always loved Ireland. She always said she would give anything to live those first 16, 17 years over again.
Mm.
And bear in mind that was supposedly in the books. It showed they were poverty-stricken, but she says they never knew they were poor, and that they had the happiest life she could ever imagine those first years in Ireland before she came over to the States.
How about Grandpa?
Now Grandpa was a little different. He at least he didn't admit to a great loss leaving Ireland or even a great love for Ireland. He was tremendously ambitious, and he looked upon Ireland as just a poor place, and he didn't seem to have much nostalgia for for Ireland. He was very ambitious. When he first came to this country, he came to Boston and worked in the docks and worked in plants and worked anywhere he could to save money and any hours he could possibly get. He was very ambitious, and his main goal was to work hard in this country and to get ahead and save as much money as he could and be as thrifty as he could, and he was able to do that, and he wound up being able to leave the rented place we were living in Astoria and buy a house. Then he even was able to buy a house in the country. We all had everything we needed, even though you only had, one job at that particular time.
What was he doing?
He was started as a subway worker, and he became a motorman on the old IRT subway.
Actually driving the trains.
Yeah, driving the train.
What did Grandma do?
Grandma always stayed home. She was a housewife. Stayed home and took care of the kids.
And then there were three more kids after you?
Yeah. It was Teresa was after me, and then Georgie, and then Alan. They were me, John, and Teresa were just 1 year apart. Georgie was a couple years later, and Alan was around 3 or 4 years after that. He was the baby of the family. We call him Runt.
What are some of your most vivid childhood memories from the as early back as you can remember?
Well, I guess the earliest back I remember when I was maybe about 4 years old or something like that. I remember one time. At that time, we were living in houses that were built by the Steinway Piano Factory for its employees, and we were renting what they call a cold water flat. You had no central heat. You would heat the apartment, which was they call railroad apartment because the rooms came in one straight line like a railroad car, and you would heat the apartment yourself with a wood fire usually, and sometimes you had a little coal to throw on it, and I remember that experience as a real fun one. My mother there were a lot of people, most of them were from Europe, Czechoslovakian people, and maybe Irish people came in. There was always a lot of camaraderie in the house and even in the neighborhood, and people, were always, having fun with each other. Now, the earliest I remember that one time I was in the crib, and I was shaking the crib and screaming my head off because nobody seemed to be in the house, and I don't really remember anything else of that particular incident when my mother came home. I'm sure she wasn't gone too long either. I remember one Christmas, my father, well, it may not have been Christmas, he brought home a big dog he found in his travels, a big German Shepherd, even bigger than most German Shepherds. He seemed to have 5 paws that flapped all over the place on all his feet, and we just loved him. And I remember one time we were having a big dinner, a big Christmas, it wasn't a Christmas dinner, but a big dinner, and my father brought home today you would call him a street guy. At that time he was just a wandering guy with no money or no place to go, and he had a big meal with us. I remember that, and I was probably 4.
It was just a stranger.
Yeah, just a stranger. I was probably about 4 years old. In that particular neighborhood, 2 blocks up from us, would be north from us, just 2 blocks, there was like a little development there of houses, and this little old Italian lady, she would, every day, you would hear her calling, "Hey, Geronimo!" She was calling her son wherever he was. But when she screamed that down the block, no matter where he was, you'd see him running back home.
What about when you started going to school? What are some of your memories then?
My first time going to school, it was PS 84, which was probably around 10 or 12 blocks from us, and I remember getting lost the first time in school and crying and some man coming and helping me out, and I did wind up in school. In those days, kids, parents didn't worry about their kids being interfered with or being hurt by strangers. Kids would just want kids of 6-year-old kids would want to school that were 12, 14 blocks away. And I remember that was a fun time. I remember a kid right across the street named Frankie Lentz, and it was all wooded areas and trees and everything, lots, and down from there was the East River. Well, we had a big fire. I don't think I was there at the time, but the word got around that Frankie Lentz was barely burned in a fire, and he was. We didn't see him for months and months after that.
Tell that story about how there was a coach, a really tough coach that you passed the story around that you had punched him. You were in trouble by him, and he brought you behind the stands. He brought you behind the stands, and he punched the wall. He didn't actually punch you.
Oh yeah. Well,
what's the whole story?
Well, that was in junior high school, and probably around the 7th or 8th grade. His name was Mr. Hare, and he was a short, stocky guy. He looked chubby, but you could see he was very well built and very strong. And he would ride to work on a bicycle every day. His name was Mr. Hare. And he was in charge of the gym, along with another monster guy who was 200 pounds, around 6'6". But no one was afraid of Mr. Kuhlman. He was an easygoing guy. But Mr. Hare, a lot of people were terrified of him because he was, really a rough type of guy. One time we was in the gym, and we were all sitting down before some exercise or something like that. I just forget what it was. We were all sitting down, and we weren't supposed to talk. I guess I was talking, and he called me up. He said, "Macaulay, come up there, come up." And then he took me away from where all the kids were, and even with his authority, even when he left the place, you could still hear a feather drop. And he took me in back of the gym, where it was, lockers and stuff like that in the back. He took me in the back, and he took his hand, and he banged a steel locker, and said, "If you ever do that again, you're in serious trouble." And he banged it so loud that it rang throughout the whole gymnasium. It was such a tremendous crash. And he said, "Now get out of here!" And I just turned around. I walked out. I walked back to my place and sat down. And after the gym was over, they were saying, "What?" Everyone was asking me, "What happened? What happened, Pete?" And I said, "Well, he swung at me and I ducked, and he hit his hand in the locker." And I got a lot of credit for that.
How about the story about the girl who you had a crush on, and you would play football in the lot?
Oh yeah, that was St. Francis lot. It was hundreds of yards long and very wide too, and a good part of it, the far end of it was soft sand where we used to play tackle football and Johnny ride the pony and try to get the other guy down, and just vertical to the end of the sand lot was this big house, this big white house, and these two sisters lived, Helen Harm and Rika Harm. Now Helen Harm was the older one, maybe 2 years old. She was the one that was real pretty. But Rika, what they would say, what you would say, I wouldn't say now, but in those days would say that she was a real dog, She was like as skinny as a broom, and straight hair, and very rigid features, and the sharp features, and long nose, and she was, she was just someone that you wouldn't think of as a girl, too much. But I used to have a crush on Helen Harm, and she was like the quiet type, and she almost talked and whispered when she did. She didn't come down. Their folks kept very tight, control of them. You would see them, going into the house after the father, if they left the car or something like that, they would look at us. But you'd very rarely, if ever, see them in the lots. But anyway, just through the window, Helen Harm looking out, I got a tremendous crush on her. I thought she was beautiful, and I used to. I remember one time when everyone had left, I stayed on because hoping that I would see her come to the window, and and looking up, I didn't see anybody, but I saw like after a little while, Rika came and was looking out the window, the homely one, and I still kept looking up, and hoping maybe I might see Helen, but Rika, was the only one I saw. I didn't see Helen, and all of a sudden Rika threw down something, and tied to it was a note, a note, and I opened it up, thinking maybe somehow she was giving me a message from her sister, because I never thought that she would, even notice me, and I love you, and I'm telling you. I was a little impressed, like happy to be loved by any girl, I guess. But in a way, it really didn't mean too much to me. I think I headed right home after that, I was all alone there, Mom. I was all alone in the house, waiting for Helen to show herself. And the next time I saw Helen, we were all packed up in the car, going to Rockaway, which we did every summer. My father would take us out to Rockaway, then he would come back and keep on working, and we would stay there for the summer. We was all packed up, and I saw Helen just walking pretty close to us, toward the house or around the house, and my heart was just sunk. To think that I was going away from her.
What a tragedy. Talk a little bit about getting sick. What the day before and the night before, and then the day that you did get sick, and what that led to.
Right. Well, we at that time, kids started to pal around in gangs, not gangs but groups. They would say today, they would say peers, at like a very young age. So, and we were able to go up the avenue, alone. Parents didn't worry so much like they did today. And I was around, let's see, I guess I was around 13, and I wanted to go out that night, and my mother, said no. I think it was a bad night. It was cold and raining or something like that. And she didn't want to let me out, and I was really mad. And I said, I'm going out anyway. And I stormed out the door. I forget what happened when I got back, but anyway, I know the next day I had pneumonia, the beginnings of pneumonia. The very next day, I guess I was pretty close to to 14 at that time, and from the pneumonia, I got rheumatic fever. I don't know if it was from pneumonia, but it all came around the same time, rheumatic fever. And from the rheumatic fever, I got endocarditis, and which resulted in ultimately in a damaged heart, rheumatic heart disease, endocarditis, damaged leaking valves, and they call it murmurs of the heart. Compensation, what they will call compensation, has that in my heart to make up for the scar tissue that was on the heart and so on. And we our family doctor was Dr. Ortandy. We also had I was hospitalized in Mary Immaculate Hospital in Jamaica for a couple of periods of time during that 4 years. I was sick from 14 to 18.
You were sick from 4 years. You were homebound for 4 years, from 14 to 18.
The home instruction teachers started coming to the house from 14 to 18, and during that time I was hospitalized, in the Mary Immaculate Hospital, at least 2 or 3 times. I actually enjoyed going to the hospital in those days because I liked the idea that the attention I got in the hospital, and since at home I couldn't do anything anyway, I was more or less supposed to stay in bed, and I hated to do that. And the hospital with nice nurses and so on. So and I also knew that I needed to be the doctors always told me that I needed to be as inactive as possible, and at home it was harder to do that. And I knew for my own health reasons, for my own good, that the hospital was the best place for me. So I was never, unhappy going into the hospital. But anyway, I remember one time when my mother, grandma, was going to the doctor, to Dr. Tandy, for something that she had. I just forget what it was. I asked her. I said, "Mom, ask Dr. Tandy if I could ever be a prize fighter. If I might ever get well enough to be a boxer, prize fighter." Because that always intrigued me. Joe Louis. In those days, Joe Louis used to fight, and we used to listen to the fights on the radio, and it was better than TV, because the way they described it, you knew everything that was happening, and people would scream, and so I was really enchanted by the idea of being a prize fighter, being the center of attention, and I was always pretty good with my mitts. So they used to call them in those days. So Grandma said that she would. So when she came home, I couldn't wait for her to come home. I said, "Mom, what did Dr. Tandy say about that? Did you ask him?" She said, "Yeah, I asked him, Pete." Well, this is the way he said it, Pete. At a prize fight, there's usually 10, 20,000 people there, 50,000 people that are watching the fight, and two fighters in the ring. He said, "Why can't Pete be one of the 50,000 instead of one of the two fighters in the ring?" Well, I didn't like that answer too well, but I guess it could have been worse. Anyway, I had rheumatic fever, which was pretty prevalent in those days, and two kids in the neighborhood had it, and one kid, Don Cottrell, died from it, a young kid, 13 or 14 too. He got it, I think, around the same time as I did. Another kid, Georgie Violante, that was a very good-looking kid, and built to be an athletic type of kid. He got it, and he wasn't able to take part in any athletics or anything like that. I really don't know if he would still be alive. In those days, they used to say that the lifespan of someone whose heart was damaged from rheumatic fever was about 30 years old. They lived to about 30. So anyway, when I got 18, before that, I always prayed to the good Lord to get better, and Grandma always prayed for me too, and she I prayed hard, and I sometimes I would go to sleep crying, asking God to help me get well, because I was always a very active kid. I always liked the idea of sport. I know when I was first bedridden, as they say in those days, I used to before that I used to pitch on this team that we had, this baseball team, and my arm was like bent, halfway bent, and when I went to sleep, I couldn't stretch out my whole arm, and each day it would go down another inch or half an inch or something like that, and it took a long time, a couple months, before I could ever put my arm right straight down like that.
Was that a result of the illness?
No.
Oh, from pitching.
Yeah, I used to throw these curveballs, trying to be a hero, twisting my arm, and not doing it the right way, and I got so that my arm was practically crippled, and so that was one benefit of me being bedridden. I got rid of the arm that was that I couldn't straighten out. Eventually you could straighten it out, but so then eventually, when I got to be 18, I forgot, this good friend of the family, the Sullivans. The Sullivan family that lived a few blocks from us, who the house we bought in the country was because they were there. They brought us out there, and we won them, which was a great experience. to have a place to go to in the summertime. Before we used to always go to Rockaway every summer, but then we started going to it was Amityville, Long Island, and it was fishing there and swimming, everything you wanted. So when I was 18, I up until that time I was around 17, I guess, when this girl came over to the family to visit us, and she knew I had rheumatic fever, and I was in bed, and she gave me a prayer to say to St. Jude, and she told me to say the impossible, and she told me how she had an ankle that was couldn't heal. She said, I don't know, she said it was cancer, but the doctor recommended that they had to amputate it. And instead of that, she prayed to St. Jude, and it disappeared completely, the illness. So she was very, she liked me a lot, and she was very, concerned and avid in telling me how to pray to St. Jude every day to get well. Well, then I renewed my efforts. I even prayed harder than I used to. Of course, not just to St. Jude, but to God and the Blessed Mother too. And I prayed hard to get well. And Grandma was praying for me too, of course. And when I went down then I decided to go down to take the Army physical, they couldn't find a trace of the disease. It was just like a new heart was put in. And I was very nervous, going into it. My heart rate was very fast. I forget what I told them that I had rheumatic fever before, but I don't think I did. I don't think I would have told them that, But just because of the rapid heartbeat, they sent me over to Governor's Island, which they have a hospital there, federal hospital, and I stayed there a few days, and they took all kinds of tests, and this time I saw my medical record on the table, on one of the nurses' tables, and I sneaked it into the bathroom, and I was looking through it, and I was really, really happy. The happiest time I think I had probably since I was born. When I looked in big red letters or black letters says no apparent abnormalities, and I knew that meant that my heart was perfect.
They couldn't find any trace of the rheumatic heart fever at all?
No, none whatsoever.
And then you went into the paratroopers?
Then I went to the paratroopers and took the paratrooper physical, and that was no problem either. Then in the Army I started boxing. I had a funny experience about that. Do you want me to tell you that?
Sure.
One, boxing? Well, I started boxing, and this other kid I knew, I can't think what his name was. He was a tall, lanky kid from New York, that hated the Army as much as I did, and he went in for boxing just to get on special duty, and I went in for boxing too. I liked the idea of boxing. My father bought us a pair of boxing gloves when we were kids, so we did. Me and John and our friends, we did quite a bit of boxing. Anyway, our first lieutenant, Lieutenant Whitaker, I'll never forget his name. What's his name? This kid that I told you about. Instead of going to the boxing, he would just stay in the either in the barracks or in the lounge, the canteen they call it. He was staying there reading there was always people in there that were on special assignment too, so he could get away with it. Instead of going to training boxing, because he wasn't interested in boxing, he would just go into the canteen and have a great time every day. He was off like half a day, and I remember Lieutenant Whitaker came around one time, and the boxing captain, the guy who was in charge of the boxing team, came to our barracks one time. He saw me there, and then he asked Lieutenant Whitaker, he was in charge of our barracks, I remember the kid's name. He said, how how's my fighter Miller doing? You know, he said to the captain, he said, you fighter Miller, who Miller, Bill Miller, the boxer, and he says, we don't have any Bill Miller boxing for us. The guy almost got a court martial, you know. He got a restriction for 6 months or something like that, you know. But the jig was up, and he was a nice guy too. But anyway, this is the first fight I had. I'll never forget the guy's name. A guy named Richard Hill, and I was 135 pounds. And really, I didn't know. I thought I knew about boxing, but really didn't. And he didn't know too much either, I guess. And we just slugged each other. The first round, just throwing the punches all over the place. And I remember saying to myself, "This is crazy. I never thought it was this bad. What is this? I mean, I'm in a it's like being in hell, getting killed." But I didn't want to give up. And then the second round, we did the same thing, exactly the same thing. Just stood there, hitting each other, blasting each other, you know. And our arm was so tired we could hardly lift them, you know. They felt like they weighed 100 pounds apiece. The arm. And I don't think this ever happened before. The referee, or the captain, or whoever was in charge of the whole thing, he didn't let us go out for the third round, and he raised both our hands. boy, was I relieved to get away from that one, you know. But no one was the winner, you know. He raised both our hands. He said, "All right, you guys both won."
But so to go back a little bit, so the life expectancy was 30 years, and how old are you now?
72.
So what do you think? It was a miracle?
Of course. Even one time when I went to see this Jewish doctor at Tandy, he had sort of heard, I guess, that I wasn't in bed anymore, this and that, and I went to see him, and I told him, you know, I passed the Army physical and this and that, and I don't even think he examined me, you know, at that time, and he signed a passport or something like that that I needed at that time, and he says, "Pete," says, "that was a miracle." I don't know if he had faith or not, but he was a Jewish doctor, and he said that was a miracle, you know. There was no explanation for it. What, man?
Okay, so you were cured of the rheumatic heart fever, and then you went into the Army. What year did you actually go into the Army?
In May 46.
And how long were you in the Army for?
18 months. I got out November 47.
And you didn't like it very much?
No, I didn't like the discipline and the regulation. You know, so much structure. You know, you had to be in bed at a certain time. You were off on weekends, maybe some weekends, but most of the time you wind up doing KP, kitchen police. You have to work Saturdays and Sundays. I didn't like it at all, and I wasn't given to being disciplined or having a lot of finesse in things like shaving. You know, if you shaved, if you got they would have inspection every morning, and if you had a little thing on your beard or something like that, or a little spot you missed, you know, you would get, they call gig for that, you know, which meant you'd have to stay, do KP, extra work and stuff like that, you know. And so I was always getting, me and another guy from New York, and this guy Bill Miller I was telling you about, we were three guys that were the sloppiest guys in the outfit, you know. The three New York guys, you know. This guy, his last name was Flynn. He was like an older guy. He was even more sloppy than me, and he was always in the same boat as me. So I never. We always liked to do as little to get away with as much as we could, because we found out in trying to do the right thing, and we couldn't compete anyway. You know, the beds, the way it had to be made. They come around in the morning and inspect the beds, and they have to be real smooth. If there's a crease in it, you're in trouble. You know, that sort of thing. So I hated that. You know?
But you missed a war, huh?
Yeah, and the reason why I what's his name? The reason why I got into boxing when I got to my regular outfit was, to avoid that. I got on special, what they call special service, and in Fort McClellan, that was Alabama, where we went for what they call basic training. That was like 6 or 8 weeks, I think it was. At that particular time, I learned what a GI party was. A GI party was you had to scrub down the barracks and clean out the beds, and it was terrible. They called it. I used to think it might be a GI party, might be something where they had a good time, but it wasn't at all.
And so you were only in the Army for 18 months, and then went back to New York after you got out of the Army?
Yeah.
What did you do after that?
Then I went, after a little while, I went back to high school and got my diploma from regular high school,
Because you were sick. When you were sick, you missed out on high school?
Yeah. Well, no, I got all but, I had the home instruction, all but enough time to graduate, the last 6 months. I just had to finish up 6 months of high school.
So you got your high school diploma, and then what?
And then I took a little time off, and in 49, January 49, I went to St. John's. My John, my brother John, Uncle John, he had graduated from St. John's, and that's how I happened. He was like my role model, and to go to St. John's, And so I went to St. John's too. In fact, the president of the school, knew John, and he knew that I was his brother. So I think they allowed me some leniency but with the home instruction thing. It was nonsense. I mean, it was like not going to school. I fiddled around with the typewriter. That's about all I did. The teacher used to tell me I had a gift for writing, and I had, and I had did some composition, but I really didn't learn any math or nothing like that, hardly, So when I got to college, I failed math for the first year. Then I decided to wait until the end, till my fourth year, to take the required year of math, But that time I paid attention. In math, we used to have this physics teacher, and he would get up in front of the classroom. He had big thick glasses. He would get up in front. He was a little guy too. Reach up the blackboard. He'd make these tremendous equations and things like that. I didn't know anything of what he was talking about, And me and some of the other veterans, it was a veteran class. We would just stay in the back of the class and fool around and not take it serious at all.
You failed?
Yeah, I failed. Sure, I got like a 30, I think it was.
So what did you?
These trigonometry things, delta, that wind up being a page long. He was a specialist in that. He liked to put these tremendous problems up there. But when I took it last year, I said to myself, I got to pass this, or I won't graduate. So I sat in the front of the class. I really paid attention. I was able to get a pretty good mark.
You passed.
Yeah. It's all just routine, knowing the procedure then, and you could never figure it out unless, unless you really, know the method. You could never get the right answer,
So what did you get your degree in?
In what they call social studies.
And what did you do right after that, right after school?
Well, after school, I killed a little time, I guess, working little things here and there. And then I was working in the post office when I went to school. I was working part-time in the post office, in the main post office on 34th Street. And you start at 6, and then when I was at school, I was working from 6 to 2:30, 8 hours. Other than that, the regular hour, part-time hour was 6 to 4, but a lot of times we worked from 6 to 12. And then I kept that job for a while, and then got the job with the welfare department. Do you know that me and Bob Degnan worked in the same job?
No, doing what?
Right down on 20th Avenue, there was a construction company called Gateway Construction Company, and they had these concrete forms the metal forms that they fill with concrete when they made floors or ceilings or things like that. And we used to have to bang out the concrete. We used to have a big block of steel and a hammer and bang it out. And the supervisor, the little guy that run it, Charlie Duncan, he was a Scotsman, he'd be all over the place, and we'd be working in the freezing weather. The piece of steel, the big block of steel that you used to put on one side of the cast, that was all filled with concrete. You put it on one side, and then you have to bang the other side to try and knock out the concrete, and that was sometimes it would be like 10 degrees or 5 degrees, and they had a giant fire going, and the boss, Charlie Duncan, if he saw you trying to hang around the fire to get warm, he would kick the thing over. He'd be so mad, He said, "I didn't pay you guys to get warm. There's work to do here," and he like kicked the thing over, and he was a mean little guy, And I remember the very first weekend, we worked the week, when we first, me and Bob, when we first went into the yard, it was like a big construction yard. I asked someone who the boss is, and they pointed him out to me. I said, me and my friend are looking for work. Do you have any work? He says, yeah. He said, we got it work. He said, pays $1 an hour. You work clearing the concrete, something like that. And me and Bob were glad to get the job at $1 an hour. Was pretty good. Before that, I was working sometime when I was going to school at Bigford for 65 cents an hour. That's the one that the lady took the trade in. Complain about that. So at $1 an hour was pretty good. And Bob quit after it was time to go back to school. And I still stayed there because I was actually finished with school.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe that was the time that I hadn't started college yet. I'm not sure. The years sort of, it's hard to, it's hard to pick out which time. But anyway, Bob and we got that job after looking all over, like Long Island City, where there are a lot of, construction stuff going on, and the answer was no, they didn't have anything. And we were there, close to home, and we said, let's try down there and see on 20th Avenue if there's anything. And we got that job.
So was this maybe early 20s? You were in your early 20s, early to mid 20s,
so, yeah.
Something like that. So yeah. were you you got married when you were what age?
44.
44 for the first time.
Yeah.
So how about in your early and mid 20s? There no romantic interest to that point? No relationships?
Well, our crowd was always going to dances and going out, and then if you met a girl you liked, you'd make a date and that sort of thing. Yeah, we would go on dates, but
nothing serious.
But usually nothing serious. I mean, I was halfway serious with a couple of girls, I guess.
What does that mean?
Through the years, Well, that had gone out with steady for maybe even up to a year or something like that. They're going out pretty steady.
So how long before you became a social worker? Before you took that as a steady, as your normal job? What age were you then?
Well, let's figure that out because I had 20 years in when we came down to Florida in 1984, I think it was. Therefore, 64, 28. So it was quite a while. Should I be talking now, man?
Were you about 36? Does that sound right?
No,
about mid 30s?
A little younger than that.
A little younger than that?
I think I was around maybe 32 or something like that.
If it was 64 when you started? 1964 when you started, and you were
Yeah,
born in
yeah,
28.
on that particular, on the welfare job. But I had been working in the post office, before that a couple of years, and then working at Gateway, the one that I stayed there for a couple, maybe a couple of years. So it was, I guess before I got that real steady job, the government job, I guess it was, I was maybe 32 or something like that.
And so talk about some of the funny stories that you've told us before. What the story about the parking tickets? You had somebody come to your door and ask you to come down and take care of some parking tickets.
No, I came home one day, and Grandma says the policeman called, and he wants you he wants you to go down to the 114 precinct. That's one in Astoria. And straighten out some of the tickets that you got. So I knew that I had 5 or 6 tickets, and I had, so I brought down enough money with me. I brought down what I figured. I brought down about $40 or something like that. At that time, most of the time the tickets would be like $2 or $5 the most. I brought down about $40, and we went to court. And they raffled off all of they dug up even things that I had forgot about, and I owed like $60 or something like that. And then I said to the guy, I says, well, I got $40. I'll bring it's okay if I bring the rest back. $60. You got $60? I said, no, I got. Move on. And I found out I was moving on to where they were arresting you and bringing you down in a pie wagon. Imagine that.
So what happened?
You go to court and to pay a fine, and you wind up going down. They brought us down in the pie wagon, and they made all kinds of stops. They were stopping in different places, and some of the guys that they brought on were real criminal types, and for warrants for serious things, One guy was facing 20 years, and because they were talking on the way down, and here I'm riding there, bumping along. I'm thinking, what am I doing here? This is madness, like I was some sort of criminal, And they brought us down, and they herded us all into this great big room, Then they started to separate us and put us in cells, and they put us, I was in a cell with maybe about 30 or 40 other guys with a big place, a big pot there in the middle to go to the bathroom, and some guy, plowing in front of everybody. It was really crazy. And then a couple hours passed by, and they brought us a bologna sandwich on crusty white bread, It looked like it was years old, or a roll, and then there was this guy that was right in front of me was a businessman. He was a businessman. He had like a briefcase just like yours, a briefcase, and you could see he was really a professional businessman. And he wanted to give a check, but they wouldn't accept it. He didn't have the cash, and he was right along with us, And funny, I met a kid, Tommy Engelhardt, that was a professional boxer that I knew good. I mean, not that good, but I knew of him because he was from Astoria, and he got good write-ups and stuff like that. And he was in for some ticket that wasn't paid, But he paid it right away and got off, Eventually his wife came and got him off, and this German guy with a German accent was telling me that all he needed was $20 or something like that. I just forget what it was. And if I would give it to him, he would come back and get the other $20 for me, Well, in the meantime, we were allowed one phone call, so I called up the house, and Eileen. I called Georgie and Eileen. I told Eileen what the story was, and I said, Artie will be coming around to see me today. I think it was a Saturday. If you see Artie, give him the money, give him $20, and tell him, to bring it down to 110th Street, because I'm in jail. And she says, okay. And Artie was like a good friend of mine. We used to sell cars together and that sort of thing, invest in cars and sell them. And but I wasn't sure whether he was going to come around or not, you know. So when the German guy asked me for the money, I said, I think, well, I'll do it and give it to him, and hopefully, you know, he'll come back. In the meantime, I had these old, you know, old criminal type of guys that I sort of befriended. I was in there 3 or 4 hours and got to be pretty friends with. And one guy advised me, he said, "Kid, don't do it." He said, your friend's going to come with the money, and then to make up with what you need. And then this guy's not going to come back, and you're going to be caught holding the bag. He said, stick to what your sister-in-law is going to send your friend up with the money. You know, don't take a chance. You know. But anyway, I did it anyway because the guy, you know, he seemed desperate, and I figured that he was honest and on the level, you know. And so a couple of hours later, they called down. They said, "McCauley, you come up," and this and that. And he had come back. He came back with the money. He gave it to me, so I was able to get out. And just as I was walking down the steps on 110th Street, a lot of these big concrete steps, Artie Bauer is coming. He sees me. What a coincidence! We met just as I was coming down the steps. He's coming up. He said, "Pete, I thought you was in jail. Eileen called. You know, I saw Eileen and she gave me the money to get you out." I said, "Yeah." I said, "I wasn't there. I just got out. I lent the guy the money. He came back and got me out. You know." So that was you know, that was quite an ordeal, because I was thinking to myself, "Gee, I didn't have to go down there at all." You know. You know, that was really something. I couldn't believe that. That was you know, one of the biggest shocks I ever had. To be home on a Saturday morning, free as a bird. A couple of hours later, to be in with all kinds of criminals, eating a bologna sandwich. You know, I couldn't believe it that I was stuck in that trap. You know.
Real quickly, talk about. Do you remember where you were when World War II ended? When you first found out that World War II ended?
Well, we were living in Astoria, you know. I mean, I don't remember specifically, you know, the day it ended. You know, VJ Day, I guess. It was VE Day first with the Germans, then VJ Day. When the Japanese, after we bombed Pearl Harbor, I think that was August something 45. I can't think of the exact date, you know. But just a few days after that, the Japanese surrendered.
Then you mean when we dropped the bomb, not when we bombed Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, when we dropped the second bomb on Nagasaki. First was Hiroshima, then we dropped in. A lot of people say Hiroshima, but we always said Hiroshima.
How about How about the walking on the moon? Do you remember where you were then, or do you remember what that was like?
Yeah, I think I was in Rockaway at that time. Rockaway in New York, you know.
Did you watch it?
Yeah, I think we saw it in the bars, you know. Yeah, they had it in the bars. Most of the people were always excited about it, you know, and running in to see it and that sort of thing. And that's when I saw it at that time.
How about the Kennedy assassination? Do you remember that?
Well, I remember it, but I don't remember, you know, exactly where I was at the time, you know. I think that I sort of remember riding a subway, maybe on my way to work, when the buzz started to come around that Kennedy was, you know, the word started, people were started to become aware that Kennedy was assassinated, you know.
How many, you lived in a lot of different places. How many different places have you lived in besides New York? Didn't you live in New Orleans for a little while?
Yeah.
Dallas?
Yeah, well, New Orleans and Houston. I lived in Houston for about 6 months, in New Orleans, you know, a few months. And let's see, I think that's about all the places that I actually lived in, you know. I don't think I lived in any other places for any length of time, except you know, in the Army.
But then you eventually moved back to New York, where you got the job with the welfare department.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Anything to say about that? Any?
Well, in New Orleans, the reason why I left New Orleans, you ever hear of snow cones?
Sure.
Snow cones? Well, that was a big thing in New Orleans because it was 100 degrees temperature in the summertime, and you see these places that were selling snow cones. There were people standing in line for 2 blocks. It was amazing, you know. People standing in line for 2 blocks for just a paper cup with. The snow wasn't icy. See this, like you see here sometimes, snow cones. The snow was sort of like almost like snow. The machine grounded it so thin that it was just like snow, like soft as cotton. And then they poured syrup on it, and it was a big thing. So me and my friend, we figured that maybe we should go into that business. So we had a house, a little shack built right outside a grocery store, right by the racetrack. You know, right by the racetrack. I can't think of the track. I think Jefferson Downs racetrack, right in New Orleans. And this grocery store was something like a 7-Eleven. He had the property where we could build a little house, you know, a little shelter to sell the sun, you know, the snow cones. So I bought this snow cone machine for $75, and we started working out there. It wasn't the big success we thought it would be, because most of the cars that came there would go directly into the track. You know, they weren't interested in buying snow cones, even if it was hot. You know, they would go directly into the track. So we weren't doing that good. We were doing like a little business, and the machine we had, it wasn't the type that was, that made the best snow cones. But we were thinking about going into the business, you know, and buying a better machine and maybe getting set up somewhere else. But at that time, I remember I went to St. Louis Cathedral, was the center of New Orleans there, and they call it St. Louis Square. I went to church at St. Louis Cathedral. After Mass, I'm walking down towards where I live, and I saw this accident, like it was an accident. This kid, apparently from out of town, like a college kid, hit this other car in the rear. And these guys come out, they were like bulls, you know, 3 or 4 guys, and they were saying, "Look what you did to our car." So I was just standing there as an observer, and the kid said, "Well, how much do you think? You know, would $50 be okay, or something like that?" And it's $50. That's at least $300 or $400 worth of damage. So I could see where they were trying to bulldoze the kid. So I stepped up and I said, no. I said, $50 is very reasonable for that. It's only like scratch. There's no bad damage. And one guy pulled out his badge. He said, "Where?" "Cops, you know." He says, "You shut your face or we'll kill you, you know." And I thought, geez, these guys are dangerous, you know. So I walked away, you know. I knew I was in over my head there, you know. I walked away, and I got to a phone booth. I called the cops, and I told them where the place was. I said, "It looks like these guys are trying to intimidate and extort money from this kid that was in a simple accident with them, you know. You better come over." And I did that. I think I did my duty, and I started to walk home. I passed the bar, and just then these bulls, 3 or 4 of them with the kid, are coming out of the bar with the kid still there with them. So I said, "I want to tell you guys, I called the police and they're going to be over. You know, so you better lay off the kid." Something like that. They said, "You did what?" I said, "I called the police." And just then they started jumping on me and trying to push me into like a little alleyway there between the bar and something else. They tried to push me in, but I was in pretty good shape. I just kept on wrestling with them and keep them from being put in there. But I wasn't punching them or nothing like that. And all of a sudden I heard the sirens come, and 6 or 7 cops cars come, and I said, thank God the cops are here. And they roll out of their cars and they run up to us, and they start pumping me with all kinds of billy clubs. They start hitting me with clubs and clubbing me. I thought to myself, this is madness. What are these guys, crazy? And they kept on beating on me, you know. And then they put the cuffs on me, and this little skinny guy came up to me when I had the cuffs on, and he hits me right in the eye, all his might, you know. Then they drove me in the police car and take me to the hospital to get stitched up. Then they take me to the police station, and on the way to the hospital, I had money in my wallet, and I had heard the cops down there steal your money if they arrest you. So I was able to get the money out of my wallet. I think it was 30 bucks or something like that, or 40, and put it in my shoe. I was able to do that. Then when I got to the police station, they took my wallet, and they threw me in jail. And the next day in court, these 7 8 police with all their badges and
Hold on, wait, let's get the other tape then, because this is all what we want to get.
You heard that story before, right, Mark?
Yeah.
Here I am, just a hard-working guy in New Orleans, you know. So we're in jail. I mean, I'm in jail, and I give my wallet and all my belongings to the desk clerk, you know. But I had 35 bucks in my. I remember now. With 35 bucks in my or 40 bucks in my shoe. And then the morning came, and you know I was up. I got stitched up in the hospital. Then the morning came, and we went into court, and I see these 6 or 7 cops that were all in part of the incident with me. Because I had screamed just before they took me. I said, because there were people all over the joint. I said, I hope some of you people show up in court tomorrow when they press charges against me. I screamed that out, you know. But of course there was no one there. And these guys all sitting with their brass, everything polished up. I'm telling you, I mean, it looked like some sort of like ceremony or parade or something there, you know. Looking at me when they read off the charges: assaulting police officer, resisting arrest, all kinds of charges, you know. And the judge must have known it was all a fake, because although he fined me 35 bucks, but for someone that's a street guy, might not have any money at all, which they probably suspected I was, $35 is like $1 million, you know. And they probably didn't expect me to have it. So when I put out the $35 and the cops were looking, they were flabbergasted. And I walked out, and on the way out, this clerk at the end, she probably, I was the guy who was all beat up, black and blue, eyes closed and everything. And really, I got a bad beating. This girl, and none of the cops were hurt. I mean, I didn't throw one punch. You know, it's a good thing I didn't, Martin. If I did, I'd be dead. I mean, they would kill you. You know, they don't care. Say you went for their gun. But so she gives me a call. She says, "Here, look up these attorneys. They're good police attorneys." She says, you know. So I took that. So on my way home to my house, my furnished room, I went up and saw these attorneys, and I told my whole story. How I was beat up and this and that in jail. I just got out of jail, and they put me on bond, and I got a trial date set, and they said, Macaulay, what you should do is get out of town as quick as you can. These guys will kill you. Like if they knew I was fighting the case, I was going to come back and maybe make it tough for them, they would kill you, you know. And Martin, you know, I found out later, I read in the paper a couple years later, where New Orleans, where these cops had shot this kid, a young kid on the bridge over some sort of altercation, and this kid was the nephew of the governor of the state. He was the nephew of the governor of the state, and they were indicted, but they got just a token penalty, you know, like 2 years in jail or 4 years or something like that. instead of being tried for murder.
Hmm.
And it was obvious that they were, that they had killed this kid. So anyway, when I came back home, I went to Frank McGlynn, that was an attorney. He was a district attorney. He worked with district attorney office for 10 years, and we grew up with him. He was a year older than me, just John's age. And he was, a good friend of mine. His father was a politician. And I went to him to see if it's about going back there and fighting the case, because I had a trial day coming up. And he said, Pete, I advise you not to go back there. He says that New Orleans is so corrupt. He said, you won't get anywhere. He says, the police do what they want down there. And I guess that's the way it is in a lot of cities, that justice don't mean anything. So I came back home from there and saw the attorney and never went back again, And my brother John, he gave me a letter to send back down to them, that hopefully would clear the name. I went to the FBI, even down there. I went to the FBI too before I came home to see if they could do anything. And they had a file on me, and John was in the FBI, so they contacted him, and John, was in honor with me. But John, would just want to avoid anything like that. But it wouldn't do you any good anyway. There's no way you could win the case, and sue the city for police brutality. You couldn't do that.
Let's take a little break, and then let's talk a little bit about you meeting Mom and moving on and getting married. Okay, so let's spend a little bit time talking about where and when did you first meet Mom?
Well, what happened one time, I was up in the Immaculate Conception Church. I usually went to Mass up there on Sundays instead of St. Francis, because they had a later Mass. And no one was in the church. It was some sort of novena was over or something like that. I forget. And Father Lyons, the pastor, was there, And he confronted me. He said, "How you doing?" I said, "Oh, good, Father." And he says, "Did you ever think of coming down to the Legion of Mary with us and joining us?" And it's a prayer group. We pray to Mary. I said, "No, I didn't even know about it." And he told me when the meeting was, and I showed up and I come down there. And what they do, they have prayers for the Legion of Mary. They're all over the world. And they do works of service, whatever has to be done to support the, the aims of the parish and so on. And they were visiting people to try to invite them to come back to church. Catholics if they had lapsed Catholics, and a short time after I joined, Mommy showed up and she joined, And she was there too, so there were times we would go out on calls together, so we got to know each other, really well. But it wasn't dating or anything like that. It was just meeting at the meetings, and then you had one day a week you would go out on assignments. Then at the meeting you would report back. And Mommy, I know that she did a lot of extra projects for she was. Good at doing things, putting things together, or assembling some pictures, that sort of thing, or making some sort of project they wanted. And Mommy always would volunteer for that. I wasn't too good at that, so I didn't get too much involved in that. But I first started to admire her for volunteering in things like that, and for producing such good results. At the meeting they would always show what we've done. And in the meantime, we were just friends, and we would be appointed to go out together only occasionally, not every time, because they would always mix it up there was about 12 people, and they mixed up but they always wanted 2 people going out together, just for security reasons, I guess, and there was a meeting once a week. So maybe a year or so, before I started thinking of mommy as a date, I really didn't think of her as a date. I was going out with a couple girls during that time, and towards the latter part, it was an Irish girl from Ireland that I really liked a lot, but I eventually figured she wasn't for me, and we broke off with each other. That was even before I started going out with mommy. And then I went on vacation to the east, to Jerusalem. I went to Jerusalem and the Holy Land and Italy and France and Portugal, all those places, and Spain. I went there. I had a few $1,000 saved from work in the post office, and when I was through with that, I had some money left. I had some traveler's checks left, maybe $1,000 left or something like that. And Edna had left and went back to Peru to stay. She went back to she was with her sister at first, and then her sister went back, and then she went back, and I had written her a letter, or she had written me a letter at one time. I don't know if it was at Christmas time or what it was, just to say hello, this and that, and nothing really romantic. And then I thought about Peru. I said, gee, maybe I should go down to Peru and see Edna, because I had about $1,000 left, And I went down and I flew down to Peru, and it was really an ordeal trying to find her. I knew her address, Los Cruceros 210, Lima, it was a hard place to get to. And so I went to the police station and I had rented a car, a big, what they call, it was a big Pontiac or something like that. It was a big car, they called it a Grande Americano car, That's what the salesman talked me into. I should have bought just one of the little ones because it was costing me a lot more money, than the other one would have cost. But he said, oh, American, has the big money, you need a big car. So anyway, I didn't know how to get to Edna, so or didn't have a phone number. So I went to the police station, and the policeman took me right to Edna's house, and I hop off and go in there, and I don't think I had my bag. I think I checked in a bag at the station or something like that. And I saw this, you see their pictures, the mom and dad, I saw them in there, and I didn't talk a word of Spanish, they didn't talk a word of English, and I was trying to explain that I'd come to see Edna. Is she home, or have I got the right place, or this and that, And then the father, I think the father said, oh, Edna, And then he got to the phone, and he called up where she was, the job, and then she came home a little while later. Said, how you doing, Edna? How's it going? This and that. I just dropped in to see you, And that's when we really started going with each other. I was down there maybe about a week or something like that, and we went to restaurants and things like that, and we really, we knew, the friendship we had, but it was under a different sort of circumstance completely. It was almost like a boyfriend and girlfriend, whereas before it wasn't. It was strictly church business, And so then when I came back home, we kept on writing to each other, and then about 6 months later, I came back down just to see her, and then we walked down the street one day, and I said to you think we should get married one of these days? Or something like that, And she says, gee, I don't know if it would be this and that. And it wasn't really, she didn't say yes or anything like that. and it was just sort of supposition, just something to think about. Then I came back. Then I came back home, and I took another trip down there, and then we got married down there. Then I proposed to her, and of course she said yes. What would the handsome American be? Nothing but yes, and that was. And then some funny things happened during the wedding. The priest, the driver to the church, got lost, and Edna and all the family and friends were waiting for it, and he got lost and he couldn't find the church, and finally we did get there. But it was about an hour late, and it was storming. It was a bad. It happened to be a bad day, or lightning or something like that, because when we were getting married, we were getting married in the church, and just then, before we said I do, the lights all went out. There was all sorts of consternation, and they didn't know what to do, and that sort of thing. It was really confusion. And the priest had to get his car and shine that was in the garage, and shine it on the church. And he was able to pull it up close enough to where the church was to shine it in on the altar, and then the wedding continued, and then on the honeymoon, I got very sick. We went up to northern Peru, where Edna's brother was in the army, and they put us up. And I remember where you took a shower, the mosquitoes. Oh no, I'm getting that mixed up with another place. Oh yeah, I remember a funny incident happened. They were throwing a big party for us, for me and Edna, all the soldiers and people like that. They were throwing a big party for us, and where we used to eat, there was a great big box there with a tremendous rabbit, the biggest rabbit I ever saw. It was 3 or 4 times the size of a normal rabbit, and I was like, saying how cute he was and this and that, and after the wedding party, after the dinner they gave us, he wasn't there anymore. The rabbit was one of the dishes that we served, that they served, and he disappeared. But then they threw another party for us, and it was just wild turkeys. And I remember how I looked forward to that, to having turkey. It might have been at Thanksgiving, to having turkey, again, because I hadn't had it for a long time. And the turkey was so game, you couldn't even eat it, it tasted awful, bloody and everything. But that's the way it was down there, But then I got sick, and Nellie, Edna's sister, I was deathly sick I was trying to be a hero, like they were telling me to drink the bottled water. I said, nah, I said, any water's good enough for me. And I was drinking it like mad from the sink. Just to show off. He said, "Ooh, you shouldn't be." I just kept, to show how tough the Yankee was, and nothing bothered him. And I got deathly sick, man. Really so sick, I just wanted to die, And Nellie came in one day with a needle about that long, and was filled up with this yellow stuff,
How long was it again? Show us again.
It was about this long, the needle, and not that skinny either, a big, like for a horse or something like that, and there was this liquid in there, yellow liquid. It was filled up that much of the thing, and she shoved it into my behind, and going in. When the needle was in, it was bad enough, a big sting like you would expect. But when that fluid started to go in, what pain that caused. what paying the fluid cost, and it took so long to going in, you know, and I never felt such pain all my life. I thought it's almost like your leg was being cut off as the fluid went in, you know, the yellow fluid. Ooh, wow! But that did the trick. I think the next day I was on the road to recovery with that thing, and then we went on a honeymoon in Lima, on a nice hotel. This was the honeymoon overlooking the city and this and that. There was some funny things there that happened, but Edna can tell you. I forget most of them.
And then you guys went back to New York?
Yeah, and then when we come back to New York, you know, before I went down there, you know, I had been renting a bungalow, an apartment in Rockaway, in Bell Harbor it's called. It's a little bit beyond the immediate beach. It was more of a nicer place, you know, Bell Harbor. But the apartment that I had was near the water. You know, I used to do my road work every day, you know, on the ocean when I lived there. So I really enjoyed the apartment. But it was so cold, and when Mommy and I came back, it was probably a cold spell because we used to lie under like 10 or 12 blankets and be freezing. You couldn't even move. Because if you moved, you hit another cold spot. It was terrible, and you could look out the window and see waves and stuff like that. That was beautiful, but it was so cold you just couldn't get out of bed, you know. And that was you know, that went on for quite a while till Mommy couldn't take it anymore, and Mommy was like frozen all the time, and I guess I was too, and I said, what are we doing here? Let's get out of here, you know. So then we looked for a place, and we rented a place in Astoria on 35th Street. We got away from the Arctic Circle.
So there's only a few minutes left on the tape now, Dad, and one of the questions that we wanted to get in is that if you had, in all your experiences now at 72, if you had one message that you wanted to pass on, if you had a chance to pass on one message to the world, what would it be?
Well, I thought about that in reading that question earlier, Martin, you know, and I thought really you couldn't give a better message than our Lord gave to the basis of living. And like when they asked our Lord, when they asked him how, you know, what's the most important, I think the Pharisees, what's the most important law of God, or how is man, what does man have to do to be saved, you know? It's so complicated, so many things, you know, and our Lord simplified it. He said, love God with your whole heart, your whole soul, your whole mind, your whole being, and your neighbor as yourself. That sums up all of the commandments, all of God's laws, and all of the counsels. That's one set and summed up everything. So they still wanted to be a little skeptical. They still were skeptical, and they wanted to trap him somehow. And they said, my neighbor, but who is my neighbor? And then he told the story of the Good Samaritan, and of course that's the ideal, you know. That's the ideal, but if for the world to be successful, that ideal has have to be fulfilled, you know, for the ultimate good of the world. But I guess it will never be done perfectly. But as people strive for that, I think that will, you know, that would be. What was the question again?
What's the message you'd want to give to the world?
Yeah, well, that would be the message, that people should strive to follow our Lord's counsel there.
So just in closing, then, Dad, you can. I like you to just say hello and goodbye to all the grandkids and great grandkids and any other generations of people that will be seeing this film long after you're gone. Say give a big hello to the posterity of years to come.
I mean, name the people separately, or
No, just say hello, just the way even people
hi.
that aren't even born yet. Your grandkids and great grandkids that aren't even born yet.
Hi, everyone, all you folks, my grandkids, my great grandkids, and anyone that comes in the family in the future, by one way or the other. I want to say hello to you, wish you the best, and if you want to be happy in life, you can. If I'm gone from the picture at this time, if you want to be happy, just toss a little prayer to me upstairs, and I'll make sure the good Lord listens to what you need. And my last advice is be happy. Make the most of every day. In fact, the best way to do it, like they say in Alcoholics Anonymous, is one day at a time. If you can be happy one day at a time and do the best you can that one day at a time, and forget about your faults and things mistakes you made in the past that had nothing to do with it. It's the future that counts. So that's because no matter what you did in your life, no matter what harm you did, or who you murdered, oh, you can still talk, or who you murdered, or who, no matter what you did in your life, remember the good Lord died for you on the cross, and He forgives you, and He doesn't want you to not forgive yourself. So
say goodbye.
So I'll say so long now. And Godspeed. God bless all of you. And remember me in your prayers.